Okay, let's get going. Tonight, I want to talk a little bit about negative rake scrapers. The negative rake scraper actually has been around for quite some time. Something like a couple hundred years ago, it was widely used in the ivory trade. Ivory is a difficult material to turn, and the negative rake was actually the, that did the trick. I took a um, seminar at Provo a bunch of years ago, and I think it was Alan Lacer who was introducing the negative rake scraper to that audience, and he had actually a piece of artificial ivory which has similar issues like the real stuff, and he gave a demo there with the artificial ivory and using a regular scraper that made a total mess of the surface. And then he took his negative rake scraper out, and it was really a much better surface. So, what's so special about the negative rake? Um, I made a couple of props here that give you an idea of how we sharpen this negative rake. See, on the bottom it's sharpened like any other scraper, and what you do is you put a second bevel on top of your tool, and that way the tool becomes much less aggressive, and so that when you use it, it doesn't catch. It just gives you a fine cut. In fact, I have been using these for maybe about 15 years or so, and I never had a catch with a negative rake scraper. The same is true. This is a straight uh, edge, and this is a curved edge, like a French curve. The straight edge is used on the outside of your ball, and the curved edge is used on the inside of the ball. Now, there's a penalty for the good behavior of the negative rake scraper. You have to sharpen it more frequently than a regular scraper. For instance, I make spheres, and so the last portion of the sphere, the negative rake scraper is a very good tool to use. It allows excellent control, and it takes a small cut, so you're not likely to overcut. And but when you use this, I may go to the sharpening wheel several times in just cleaning up one surface to sharp again. I have numerous negative rake scrapers that I use, fairly frequently. I was just talking about the sphere. I ground two of these with an opposite angle. So when you think of it, when you work on a sphere, you come around on the right hand side, and you come around from the left hand side to the center. And so with the tool sharpened at the proper angle, it's a lot easier than to try to work this with one tool where you need to go into this corner with the blunt edge. I will later tonight demonstrate this on how this works. This tool here is one of my favorites. Let me see if I can show this edge here. Okay. I bought this piece of steel quite some time ago, either the flea market or at the antique store. I don't remember where I got it. And I took it home and I put a really nice big handle on it so to give me some heft when I would use it. At the time, I was making a lot of deep vases. They were sort of the thing that I had um, focused on. And so I figured I could use this tool with hefty handle to clean up the bottom of my vases. Well, I had a big surprise coming. I stuck this tool in and boom, I got a huge catch and my vase rolled on the floor. So I figured, all right, let's try this again more easily. Well, the same thing happened. And I guess it happened a couple of times. So I decided, well, that tool is really not usable. I put it in the rack and it stayed there for a number of years. Well, once I got into negative rake scrapers, I saw this one day and I figured, well, I should give this a try. Maybe it works as a negative rake scraper. And as you see, I put this edge on it and I tried it, and lo and behold, it works like a charm. It's one of my favorite tools. I call it the archangel of negative rake scrapers. It has hollowed many deep vessels. It has hollowed many large vessels. One of the you know interesting and useful things about these tools is that you can use this goes on the inside. Obviously, you can use this uh, tool on a natural edge piece that is quite thin, and I will demonstrate that later on tonight, and bring it all the way out to the edge without getting a catch or without messing your piece up. You try that with any regular tool, you're in trouble. The notion is that once it's thin, you can never come back. Well, if it's not too thin, I mean, below a certain thickness, obviously nothing works. But so long as it's not thin, you get the negative rake scraper in doing that. And I have eliminated, you know, those of you who turn natural edge pieces will know that on the wings on the outside, on the wings that stick out further than the whole piece, you tend to get some ridges because it's difficult to start in exactly the same spot every time. And those ridges look really ugly and they're hard to sand out. But with the negative rake, you can go in there and even them out so that when you're sanding, there's very little work to do. Another thing that this tool does, and it's a little bit a game of patience, but you can get rid of tear out. We all know that when you turn the ball, particularly in some woods at the transition, you get tear out. Typically, it's on opposite uh, sections of the ball. Oh, if you take really fine cuts, and many of them, you can slowly eliminate that tear out so that in the end, when you sand it, you can actually get rid of it. If you have fairly bad tear out, you really cannot sand it out. I believe me, I have tried, and the sandpaper got hot and everything, but the tear out remained. But I have successfully eliminated tear out on obviously on vessels where it's important that you can save it and keep it because it's an interesting wood. So there are other negative rake scrapers I own. This one is basically the same as the two I showed for spheres, but a little wider. Then different noses. This is sort of like a round nose that's useful on the bottom on certain pieces. Then this guy is my narrowest. Uh, that allows me to go into small sections and pieces where you really need an arrow tool. Then I have, several different ones with a smaller guy with a round nose or close to that. A couple years ago or so, at the AAW symposium, a company called Boxmaster Tools was selling this tool here. It's a tool that's specialized for if you make boxes. When you make a box, you have the lip on one side, and you have like a shoulder on the other that need to fit together. And this tool allows you, with the negative rake, so you don't get catches, to clean up these shoulders very nicely. I've used this quite a few times, and it works very well. It wasn't exactly cheap, but that's what tool makers bet on, that we come in and buy these tools. Any questions? One of the things I was going to mention is Cindy Drosta has a treatise about a page and a half, couple of pages on negative rake scrapers. If you go to her website and you go to technical issues, it's right there. You can download it. It's quite interesting to read.
Phil, I have a question.
Pardon?
I have a question on on your curved scrapers.
Yes.
How critical is it that the bevel is identical or exact the whole way around the curve?
Say that again.
On the with your curved scrapers, how
Yes.
critical is it that the negative or that the negative when you cut the negative rake into it? How critical is it that that's exact the entire radius of the curve?
It's not really critical. I mean, you're only going to cut with this along the inside surface on where you touch it. The key to having a curve of some sort is that if you have any edges, they would dig in. This doesn't dig in, and you're only going to cut on a section of this tool from one end of your cut to the other. So it's not critical. I just found that having several tools with different geometry is helpful, because depending on the size of the piece you're working on, this curve might be too big to go, particularly as you go down into the bottom. You need to have some reasonable clearance, otherwise this corner will dig in. So, my solution to that is to have numerous tools with different curves. Nowadays you can buy negative rake scrapers commercially. Several of the companies out there make them, but you can make your own. It's easy enough. You take a regular scraper and you can put on this negative rake actually very simply. I can show you on one of my grinders on how I do this. Well, you need to see the posture and all that. So what I do is I lay this flat on this tool rest, and you adjust the tool rest to an angle that's approximate. It's not really critical. It's helpful if you use the same angle when you come back, because then you don't have to grind so much, and you just push the tool into the wheel, and you see it takes away the steel. Can you see the edge? Okay. So this action just establishes the negative rake. The tool is not sharp now. The tool sharpens on your regular grinder like you grind every scraper. And that puts on the burr that makes the tool cut. Oh, I built this little platform here so that it will support the larger tool. And this just comes up here. Same idea. That's it. You can feel the burr. That's all it takes to sharpen this tool. I will use this tool a little later on a piece where I demonstrate on how this works. The next thing I plan to do is show you a few actual demos on how that thing works. The first one I partially set up is the sphere I talked about. When you look at this sphere, try the camera too here. You can see here is from the previous mounting is a bulge, and on the other side there's also a bulge that needs to be eliminated. That's where the negative rake scraper is an excellent tool to do the job. You mount this between cup centers. A little tricky because it needs to be set up fairly precisely, otherwise it wobbles and then you cut far too much. Let's see. That's not bad. Which one? This one? You mean to the right? Okay. So this is where the pair comes to play that are at opposite angles. So
Excuse me, is it possible to focus the camera on the right?
you want to get closer, you mean?
No, focus the camera on the right one.
You would think it would be possible to do that, but that camera keeps
Okay.
unfocusing itself. We don't know why.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Yes, it's a nuisance, I know.
If you pan it to the right a little bit, the problem is that the window that you see in the background is the brightest part. So it's focusing on that. So if you were to pan it right and get the window out of the frame, it might focus.
See, the focus is a little better now, I think. At least you can see what's going on. So you just come in here. It'll take a little while smooth this out all the way. I take one tool to go to the middle, and then I take the opposite tool to go to the other side. My sphere has moved a little bit here, I think. Yeah. I will not go all the way here until this is completely done. It's a little boring. It's a little bit like watching paint dry. But you can see there is progress. The wobble that you see on the outside here has diminished. And when we look at this piece when it's stationary, you can have been removed, and eventually, it'll take another whatever 15-20 minutes for this to be completely flat. So I think I'm going to move to a different demo unless anyone wants me to continue here, but it's a little bit boring to watch this for a long time. So I need to reset this up with some different piece. One of the things I make in fairly sizable quantities are these rings. I use them as stands for my spheres. And I drill a hole in the middle and then I part these things off, and I get all this tear out here on the edge. And that's where the negative rake scraper is the ideal tool to do this job.
Phil, I do have a question.
Mhm.
Is there any guidance, or can you provide any guidance on tool rest height? I noticed when you were using the negative rake scraper on the sphere, it looked like you were below center. To me, that would be more aggressive than if you were at center of the object.
Well, basically, it cuts at center. If I was, I may have been a little bit above. I don't pay that much attention, but basically, the negative rake scraper cuts at center, so you push it in horizontally into the wood. You can also, have it look slightly down. I know I have a tendency when I make spheres that it sort of trends up. One of my mentors, told me to be careful that the scrapers catch. But I've become a little complacent because, as I said earlier, I never had one catch on me, so I figure it's not going to happen. Anyway, I use a small chuck here. This is a one-way chuck for small pieces, and I can put this ring on, and I just hand tighten it. I don't want to over tighten this because it may split, but hand tighten is enough. And I take my negative rake scraper. I think this should be sharpened a little.
Hey, Jim, there is a way to manually focus these cameras.
Okay.
Jim, can you see my chat when I write to you?
So, you know, there is some steel in there I want to avoid, and I bring it in straight and just wind it around the corner a little bit. It's ideal to round this whole edge. Put very little pressure on this. You just sort of, you know, cut the outer surface, and as you go inside here, it eliminates all these nasty little splinters. You know, if by accident you hit the steel in there, nothing much happens. In the worst case, you just cut off the slight little piece of that chuck, but it's not going to impact its workings. So this is just hand tightened. So you open it, and you see one side. Washed out a little, huh? One side is now clean. Turn this around, hand tighten, and the same thing. You can use this same technique, for instance, on a finished edge ball. I use this same technique to put a very nice rim on top that's rounded over. It takes a little more time maybe than with another tool, but you have a lot of control. I use this on the top of boxes. I also use the negative rake scraper on a box. You can, well, I would want to take the other guy here. You can take this tool and put it flat on the tool rest and push it in a box all the way down to clean up the edge. You get a very clean surface that needs little sanding, and you can go all the way down to the bottom. And since this is cut at the slight angle, it takes out a little groove on the outside, but it makes a very clean finish. I really like that feature. So see, that's quite an improvement from what this thing went on in the first instance. All right. So next thing I wanted to show you is what you can do on a natural edge piece. I turn this and I purposely put in some ridges on the inside. I think you can see the ridges along here, actually along here. So the negative rake scraper will eliminate these ridges without much fuss.
Scott, while Phil is changing here, You send a JPEG, but I can't see it. Or maybe you can't hear me.
Okay, it's directions to manually focus the camera. I can describe it to someone, but it'll take a few minutes.
Well, let Phil continue.
Okay,
With the camera pulled back a little, it's not quite so bad.
oh, no problem.
Okay, so on this, obviously, we need a rounded scraper. I'm going to use this guy a little bit just to show you how this works. I know it's somewhat overpowering for the small piece here, but it does a nice job. Now, you see over there, you can see the ridges, the shadows. Or when I put my finger in
It tries to
the autofocus. So I'm going to do some more with that negative rake scraper, and you will see that these ridges will disappear. You notice I can bring this tool all the way out to where the wings are. Now from the bottom, I will need a different tool because this tool is too big. But for the side, essentially these ridges have gone. It will need a little more. There is still some ridge here. Let's give it another shot here. Now they're pretty much gone. You could sand next and you get a very nice smooth surface. Okay. So the next demo I have prepared is that will be the last one. Going to be on like a salad bowl. I need to put another chuck on the lace for that. Can we look in this close up?
It's focused. That's good. Loses focus as you move it around.
Yeah, well. whenever you take a piece off the chuck, it's a good idea to put the mark. Either I usually put it on jaw number 1. This one here has a different system, so I just put the black mark here, and I put the mark so that when you remount it, it will mount the same way. That's extremely helpful to have it run through, because if you don't, sometimes they don't run through at all the next time, and then you're in trouble, because unless it runs through, you can make fine adjustments. Go to a bigger tool rest. Can we see some of these ridges here?
See if Mike can get them. Let me you go to the one.
This one doesn't show anything.
There we go. Can you zoom into the ridges at all? Yeah, kind of hard to tell.
Hard to tell.
Yeah,
Have to do more.
the magic of TV is not
more-
so magic.
more
You can
fluid.
use a pencil to color like a straight line. You'll see it.
There you go. We got a pencil. There
Yeah,
we
I got some.
no point. 0 point.
Oh, maybe I could put a slight
There you go.
marker on.
Yeah, you can see the break in the line now.
We're gonna keep that shut up. That's up now. While I try to do this.
So one of the things I would do, let me focus on this while we see if we can get that thing working. One of the things I would do on this ball would be to refine that lip here. It's not really nicely defined. There's too much wood on this here to work just with the negative rake scraper. So I'm going to take a gouge first and refine this a little more, but then I'll show you how the negative rake scraper, is ideal to just make a very nice and smooth rounding up here. This is very dry wood, so it's pretty fun. Pretty hard turning. Okay. That's over there. Okay, so I put this a little bit at an angle, the tool rest, so you can work inside and out. See, there's a little bit left here that needs to be done, but and you can, continue this until you have a curve that you really like. Then it only needs light sanding because that's a fairly decent cut that you get from the negative rake. Let me sharpen this and do a little more. As I said earlier, negative rake needs a lot of sharpening. They dull, but the benefits far outweigh the cost. All right. Now back to the inside. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so on the inside, we go back to my large tool here. We cut that center, and you can go straight in with the tool cutting at center. Okay. You can feel the ridges here. You see how the tool bounces? Wherever the tool bounces, you have a ridge. A lot of these ridges are already gone, not all of them. The ball isn't quite round either. As you can see, the dark areas here are the sealer I put on when after I had it rough turned, and since the ball was relatively thin, there wasn't enough wood to throw it up completely. So, this will have to be sanded out because it's only taking wood in the light areas because it's not round. Okay. No, it's fine. Fine. Okay. So, to take the center, I didn't go to the center with tool. I need to adjust the rest here a little bit, and I may have to go a tad higher with the tool rest. But basically, it's the same approach. You want to cut that center. So this is probably about as far as I would go. When I put on the sanding, this can start sanding this. Now, what remains is the outside. The outside, I would normally do the outside with the ball reversed because it's easier for a right hander to access. But the outside will go with the flat scraper, and let's look at this camera here. Yeah, you can see some of the ridges here on the screen. So of course, I have the same problem on the outside that I had on the inside. Since the ball isn't really round anymore and isn't going to get round, it cuts in the high areas. This is an area that all the markings have disappeared, and the same on the opposite side. So I would continue down. As I say, I would normally work this the opposite way because also my tools, but by and large, are this way rather than that way. So it's easier to work when you're working like that or working like this. But this guy here, I can't get round all the way because there's not enough beef left. I'm already thin in these areas. If I were to take out more wood, it becomes too flimsy. Any question? I made such a good explanation that there's no question.
Phil, I got one question. On the angle, the bottom angle is the angle that usually comes with a scraper. On the top angle, about
Yes.
what do you do? Is that you take it down about a third of the thickness of the blade, or
The what Cindy Drosta says is that the angle between the two surfaces. I mean, if you have a regular scraper, then you put an angle here of maybe 50 degrees or 60 degrees, something like that. And the notion is that the angle between the two should be certainly less than 90 degrees. It should be somewhere between 60 and 70 degrees.
all right?
Now, mine, I think, are probably less than 65 or so degrees, maybe 60. But I have, not really paid any attention uh, as to what this angle is. I have my grinders set up. This tool is set up at whatever angle it is, and the other grinder is set up at an angle. And I just keep those grinders fixed. I don't mess around with them, so that every time your scraper doesn't work, you just go to the grinder and you sharpen it. Um, and whenever my top angle gets too narrow, I put another top grind on, reasonably the same as the one that was there. But that's just reasonably. It's just done by eye. I don't really measure these, and I don't think it matters. The only thing that I found matters is that if you make, you know, make them closer to a skew where the top and the bottom angle are the same, they hold the edge not as long. That's been my experience. But that's subjective. That depends on what you're cutting and the way you're holding the tool and on and on. So I wouldn't pay too much heed to that. But by and large, I mean, even for a regular scraper, the angle that you grind it is not critical. Kurt Herzog gave us a sharpening instruction a few years ago, and one of his questions was, what angle do you have to use on a scraper? And the answer is, it's not relevant. And if he said that it's irrelevant, he gave you a little price. So I guess unless there are any other questions, I will close. Thanks for your attention. I hope that you will have picked up something and that you can make one or two of these. I think they are marvelous tools, and they do a lot of things, make a lot of things much easier than the regular tools. And at the end of the day, that helps in your turning.